It's not unusual for people in positions of power to have unique rituals. Winston Churchill, for example, used to like to dictate his speeches from the bathtub. Benjamin Franklin supposedly swore by his naked air baths. Don't knock it till you've tried it, I suppose. And this morning, the tea leaves at the bottom of my mug suggested that a quick dip in the North Sea would make everything become clear. But I'll be honest with you, now that I'm here, I'm not so sure that's a great idea. I think that would be a one-way ticket. Now, a few years ago here in the scenic seaside town of Whitby, there was a local councillor who wasn't taking ritualistic dips in the North Sea, but instead was communicating with beings from another world. And so in this video, assuming I survive, we're going to have a go at understanding his story, try and figure out how all of this came about, find out who he was communicating with, and most importantly of all, I think, figure out, was he a good counsellor? So let's give it a go. This might be the first ever video on this channel where you see me without a hat. Either through choice or not, it's probably going to blow off at some point, but I'd quite like to keep it just for the heat, I'll be totally honest. Now, this story only takes us back about 15 years, when a man named Simon Parkes was elected into council here at Whitby. And from the sounds of it, it was just days after he took on his new job that certain stories started to circulate. Interesting tales were spreading around Whitby and even made their way to the headlines. And the biggest part of this story that they picked up, and I'm paraphrasing the headlines here, was that Simon was adopted by a 9-foot tall green alien with 8 fingers. Now, not too sure where I'm going here. Now, first of all, 8 fingers. This probably isn't the right time to get into the debate as to whether this is a finger or not. So let's leave that. But how about the rest of the story? Well, the source of all of this information was actually Simon himself, because he's been on record many times, predominantly in his private life, let's be fair, speaking in detail about his real mother, his real non-human mother. What's going on here? Is this some kind of seaside thing I don't know about? I don't know what that is. So Simon, in his words, was adopted. There's quite a lot to his story. It's complex. He speaks in detail about how he's been communicating with all kinds of beings since even before he was born, when he was in the womb, and then again as a child, and many times since then. And they communicate with him through his eyes, through his optic nerves. Somebody's going to have to explain this to me. Is this like some weird sea algae? I don't think I've ever seen that before. Strange. We're going to kind of meander through Whitby in this video, by the way. My plan is we're just going to kind of walk through town and head up to the cliff tops where the church is. Let's see, see how that goes. Now, before we dive any further into Simon and his story, as you can imagine, a tale like this, particularly with somebody working in the local council, is kind of a field day for the press. And so around this time, several publications, from the semi-respectable to, let's call them, the rags, picked up on this and basically milked it for all they could, belittling Simon and just picking any angle possible to get more clicks, more views, you name it. That's kind of what they do, let's face it. So I just want to set out that what I'm not here to do in this video is just take cheap shots on somebody who has different beliefs to me. But nonetheless, I think it's an interesting and unique story, and I hope you'll enjoy it. A different side to Whitby. I do feel a bit silly in hindsight. I am actually wearing my swim shorts. Number one, I didn't check the tide time far enough in advance. Number two, I was aware of the weather forecast, so I knew it was going to be a long shot. But my original plan, back weeks when I started preparing for this video, was to start it in the water, if possible. Maybe next time. Now, Whitby Council wasn't Simon's first council position. He actually worked in Hackney Council in London a few years prior. And by all accounts, from all the testimonies that I found, he did a great job. He's spoken of very highly as being caring, conscientious, dedicated to serving the community that he works for. I genuinely didn't find a bad word about him. We're a bit too early for the arcades, it looks like. Fast forward to Simon's time in Whitby Council, and it's a similar story. Positive testimonies, everyone kind of saying the same thing. Although I have to say, this was one of very few stories that I've studied for this channel where I had a real hard time filling in all the blanks, getting a real clear picture. For one, Simon's account of all of this is deep. It has a lot of depth to it. He speaks in a lot of detail. Another example I'll give you, he talks of having 3 parts to his soul, and also with regards to his family, the fact that his mother and grandfather both worked in national and international secret service. And then the story snakes into tales of the Illuminati. It just continually gets more complex, to me at least, to my simple mind. It is looking a bit choppy. To be honest with you though, I think all of this probably would have just blown over if it wasn't for 2 things in particular. Now that we're in Whitby, this is probably the story many of you may have expected me to be talking about. And if you're interested in the connection to Dracula here, let me know, I can come back again. In fact, there's no end to the peculiar stories from Whitby. That's why it's such a great place. There are a lot of tales to be told from here. Yeah, the 2 reasons why this possibly didn't blow over like it may have done. Number 1, this isn't your average UFO tale, UFO experience. It's not as if he just had a singular one-off encounter in his lifetime. And it's also not your cliche, middle-aged man gets abducted, appears home 5 days later with a moustache and a venereal disease. This is a totally different kettle of fish. So there is that. But also some other quotes that at some point surfaced and were picked on, I suppose. One in particular was Simon talking about how he gets more sense from the aliens than the people in the town council. And that the aliens that he communicates with, I'm paraphrasing slightly here, but using the same terminology, but the ones he's communicating with have more of a sense of the needs of the people of Whitby than the people in the town hall. So that probably ruffled a few feathers. Okay, we're back into wind territory. Should have brought my beanie. Don't know why I didn't. Now, despite all of this, again, all accounts of Simon's work in the council are positive. I really tried to build like a full circle picture of this whole thing. And you can imagine there were a lot of opinionated people when it comes to a subject like this. But everything I found was positive. You've got some more fishermen sculptures. Yeah, I'm not too sure where we're going now. 7 p.m. ghost walk. Now in this whole batch of research that I did, there was one last thing that was a little bit peculiar. And it was that quite a few of the articles about this story had been deleted. Video interviews removed. And I managed to find all copies of them for the most part. But I thought that was a little bit strange. So I don't know if there was some kind of lawsuit involved that meant some of these had to be taken down. I did also find traces of a harassment lawsuit connected to some what appeared to be local journalists. And there was a bit of a thread connecting this back to Simon potentially, but it wasn't totally clear. As complex as it was to try and build all of this into a concise picture, there was one thing that seemed clear throughout all of it. And it was that despite all of the headlines and the reports and the cheap shots, everything I came across just paints Simon as a decent guy who holds some very unique personal beliefs. I'm sure he wouldn't necessarily deny that, but who had the people's interests at heart and did a great job. And let's be honest, maybe this is a cheap shot I'm about to make, but when it comes to politics and local councils, there are a great many people doing fantastic work, but it's an area also flooded with all kinds of nasty tales. People not acting in the interests of their community. And as some of Simon's colleagues, ex-colleagues pointed out, everyone's entitled to their own personal beliefs, religious beliefs, belief systems. So whilst at the end of it all, I'm not sure I did fully get the whole picture. I tried my best. But what I will say is, if in some strange set of circumstances I ever see Simon's name pop up on the ballot paper in my local elections, I'd probably give him a vote. Anyhow, let me know what you think. There is a lot more to Simon's story out there if you're interested. He's written and spoken in great detail about it, like I said, but it's a tricky one to pin down. The truth, that is. Now, I was busy yapping away, but we just climbed the famous 199 steps of Whitby. The steps which the black dog ran up back in the day in the story of Dracula. Can anybody hear me? I know these wind covers do a pretty good job, but you can probably at least see how windy it is. This has got to be like, I don't know. Oh, it stopped. Yeah, in the story of Dracula, which I just sort of discovered yesterday in a bit more detail. I've not seen it yet, but there is a ship that crashes ashore just down here, which was carrying Dracula, and I think I got this right, he shoots into the form of a black dog, runs up the steps, 199 steps, and came to this graveyard. And on the opposite side, you might be able to see that white pole over there. He spotted his first victim, who saw the eyes of this huge black dog glinting through the night. And then that's it, she was under the spell. She sort of, not sleepwalked, but came over here in a daze under his control and became his victim. Now that is all the story I had planned for today, despite there being an abundance of stories to tell in Whitby. So if you'd like to hear more in future, I'll be happy to come back. I did consider telling a few other stories in this video, but it gets a little bit complex because they've all got quite a lot to them. We've got the church here, Whitby Abbey, which is one of the most commonly visited destinations here. And then of course in the town itself, countless other tales, and as we can see, hundreds, maybe thousands of stories here. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching this windy pit stop visit into Whitby. Hopefully you've enjoyed the story. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and you may already know about this one. You may know some things that I haven't mentioned. So as always, please keep us posted in the comment section. Massive thank you to everyone who supports these trips and allows me to travel to new places to check out these stories and do all this research. Keep the recommendations coming, and fingers crossed, I'll see you next time.